Usually when I tell people that I used to be a public school teacher and now that I homeschool, their first thought is like, oh, well, that's why you're able to homeschool. That gives you the experience and that's why you could be successful at it. And that could not be further from the truth. That is what we're going to be talking about today. It's time for some girl talk. So welcome back to my channel. It has been a minute since I have done a video on here, and I'm excited to start posting weekly videos again of advice and tips, and then our weekly vlogs. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you are new here, I'm Cherie Lynette. I am a homeschool mom. I've been homeschooling my kids for 8 years, and I just love sharing tips and advice for new homeschool moms and just sharing our life and experience with you. Immediately when I saw that my son was language delayed, I did not want him in the special education program. He had just started speaking at 4, and they were talking about putting him in preschool to get speech services. I was like, there's no way I am sending my child somewhere where he can't come home and tell me anything that happened to him during his day. If they said he does something, he can't explain himself or give his side of the story. And not only have I been a teacher, but I've worked in childcare since I was 17 years old. I've worked with kids, and I have seen a lot of things that unfortunately have happened to children. So there was no way. That is why homeschooling first popped up on my radar, even though I was, an educator. I stopped teaching once I had my son, but the plan was always to send him to school. And this was the first time that it popped into my head, like, okay, I guess we're homeschooling. And when you look at special ed classes and the purpose of them, it makes sense. Some kids actually, you need more help. You need smaller groups, you need attention. But it does affect a child when they're being told, okay, you are having a harder time with this, so you're behind the other kids because you're not where the majority of children are. And I don't care how you frame it. I understand the intention of it. I understand that it's needed, but it does mess with the kids psychologically, where immediately as a child, you're telling them they're behind. The second reason was adult bias. Now, as professionals, I know we love to believe that every single professional teacher, administration in a setting comes to work and knows how to be objective and knows how to be fair. But it's just not how it is. It's for me, as a teacher, you walk through my door, it's a clean slate. I don't care what I've heard about you. I shouldn't be hearing things about you, but teachers talk, of course. But how you act in my classroom is how you act in my classroom. That's what we're going to base our relationship off of. And unfortunately, that's just not how it was for a lot of my students. They had reputations, teachers talk. And if you already have a bias against a child before they even come into your room, you're going to treat them differently. And I saw this continuously. And one thing that I've learned, if you treat a kid like they're bad and tell them that they're bad enough, they're gonna start acting bad. Like, why wouldn't they? This is who I am. You told me who I am. And with my son being language delayed, he would get frustrated. Not only was he having a hard time expressing himself, his comprehension was low as well. And so he might get upset and knock a chair over. He might get upset and throw his toy across the room. And he hasn't learned how to manage his emotions. He's learning how to talk. He's learning how to deal with a lot. And I knew the school system was not a safe place for him to learn how to manage all of this. It was going to be too much for them. And he was just going to get labeled as a problem. And then he was going to start identifying as bad. As a teacher, I get it. You have 30, 40 kids in a classroom. And if you have one child who is throwing something, that's a distraction. That causes you to not be able to work with your other kids. So I understand completely from a teacher's point of view of like, there's not a whole lot you can do in that situation, but remove that child, that call the parents, like that child is an issue because it's stopping you from your main objective. But as a mom, my job is to make sure that my child is able to thrive in the best environment. So a school setting wouldn't have been the place for my son. Plus, I would have been up at this school all the time. I already know they would have been calling me. I would have been watching it. I probably just would have had a chair in his room. So I might as well just homeschool him, because I would have been sitting there watching my child, watching the teachers. Like, it was easier on everybody. I feel like so many teachers are probably don't even know how grateful they should be that I just kept him at home, because I think we would have ended up here anyway. We didn't even go through the rigmarole. We just started where we needed to be. The next reason why I continue to homeschool as a former teacher is the freedom and the flexibility. Y'all, when I decided to homeschool, like, I didn't even know. I had no idea, like, the perks of having the freedom to control our life, having the freedom to control our curriculum. I was so used to, as a teacher, you're on all these time frames of the kids have to learn this by this time, and your school days are this long, and homeschooling doesn't take that long. It took me a couple years to figure that out. The first couple years, y'all, I was a hot mess, and I was really trying to homeschool my poor babies for hours upon hours. And then I hated being confined to a classroom. And so the freedom and the flexibility of, like, we're going to go to the library today, we're going on a field trip today. Like, we don't have to be in the house. If we learn about something, we can go see what we learned about. Like, being able to not just learn about the world, but actually be in the world and experience it has been everything. We can have school in the mornings, we can have school in the evenings. And that's one thing that I always try to emphasize to new homeschool moms is, like, just remember you're free. You're free. You can create your days however you want. I know moms whose kids are, like, more night owls. They homeschool in the evenings. I know moms who homeschool on the weekends because they work during the week. I know some do it early in the morning. You're not going to catch us up early in the morning. We homeschool about 11 o'clock, 11:30, because we like to sleep in. I get my mornings to myself. The kids get to get up and eat breakfast and kind of, like, wake up a little bit before we have to go into the classroom and actually turn on our brains and start, doing some challenging things. My next reason is because my kids get a custom education. And this is huge. A lot of people don't understand, like, in a school setting, for one, depending on what state you're in, but most states, your kids are being taught a curriculum in order to pass a test to make sure that the school gets the funding that they want it to have, compared to teaching a curriculum that's actually catered to your child, how your child learns, is interested in, so they actually enjoy learning, and that moves at your child's pace. So as a classroom teacher, I have to make sure I'm teaching my kids the curriculum that's provided for me. And I have to make sure that my kids are all moving at the same pace at the same time, because I'm on a timeline in order for them to learn this information in time for state testing. But at home, you don't have to worry about that. For one, here in Texas, we don't have state testing for homeschool. It's not like that in every state, though. So if you're not sure, make sure you check your state guidelines in your state, which you can at hslda.org. But in Texas, we don't have to worry about those state tests. But the biggest thing is that we move at their pace. One of the hardest things in a school district is that you have to move everybody at the same pace, like I said, but kids don't just grow and learn at the same pace. Like, for example, my son started walking at 10 months old. My daughter started walking after she was 1. My daughter started talking at, I feel like, 10 months old and never stopped. And my son didn't start really speaking until he was 4. So why would I expect them to learn anything exactly the same age, same pace, same time? They're two different people. We're working on a concept and you need extra time on it. We take extra time on it. It's okay. You're not behind. We just needed extra time. If you get it and you're ready to move ahead, then we'll go ahead and jump ahead. It doesn't even mean like you're ahead. You're just on pace with your learning. So the next reason is I wanted my kids to be able to actually learn the truth about everything. As we know in school, somebody decides what is being taught to your kids, which is why it's always a debate of, like, what books are banned or what's this and that. And somebody, whoever controls what, gets to influence what your kids are taught, what they're exposed to. But it's not even about, like, the political stuff or things like that. It's just the false things that have been taught. I can't tell y'all how upset I was when I grew up and I found out the real story of Thanksgiving. And then I remember how they had me walking around with that pilgrim hat on when I was little. Like, what? Y'all had me wearing a pilgrim hat and y'all knew the true story and then telling me this like little made up story and have me believe in it. So knowing that my kids are actually being taught accurate history, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it helps them go to my next point, which is I wanted them to have critical thinking skills. Man, when I look around now, it's something that I see a lot of people just don't have. Because school is not a place that's designed for people to develop critical thinking skills. The school system was designed, of course, if you don't know the history of school system, was designed to create workers, which is why we have the bells. It tells you when to move. You follow orders and you do what you're told. And then you give the answers that are expected of you. You don't ask why, you don't challenge, you don't question, you just do what you're told. The problem is this develops people who have no critical thinking skills to be like, if somebody presents them information, to be like, wait a minute, like, that don't sound right. Well, why is it like that? Like, there's no questioning. And a lot of teachers feel like if a child does start to question, that it's a form of disrespect. My children, I welcome that. You can ask a question without being disrespectful. Asking a question isn't disrespectful. The whole thing is for me to get them to question things and ask questions and wonder. Everything's not at face value. You should not just accept anything anybody says at face value. I think that's one of the saddest parts of the school system is I feel like it just like it squashes the creativity. It squashes the curiosity in so many children because you're not allowed to be that way. It is frowned upon and you are bad if you question, challenge, or go outside of what people expect. And then I think one of the more obvious reasons would be the safety in schools. And then the thought of being able to like send my kids to school, not know if they're going to come home at the end of the day. I see parents doing the best that they can because they're buying like these special backpacks or these different things to protect their kids. And it's just like, it's too much. You know, one thing I always get whenever I have this conversation is people like, well, you can't protect your kids from everything. I can't. We could go to the mall. We could go to this, anything bad can happen anywhere. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to try to protect them from anything because I can't protect them from everything. If this is something I can protect them from, guess what? I'm going to. And then my final reason is quality time, like the family time. Our life is very slow. I am very intentional about not overcrowding our schedule. I'm very intentional about making sure we're like together, like quality time, doing things together, having conversations together. The work day and the school day just isn't really built for parents to have a lot of time. Kids are spending more time with their teachers a lot of times than they are with their parents. I love that, you know, I'm with my kids. I'm with my kids all the time. They're with me all day. Now, don't get me wrong. I need breaks. Breaks are important. Breaks stop you from burning out. But I feel like I have experienced my children's childhood like to the fullest with them. I have been here for all of it. I have seen their first steps. I have seen them get their first math problem. I just get to experience it all. And for me, that is just like the greatest blessing. My kids are about to be 11 and 13 in a few months, which I'm still tripping that I'm about to have a teenager. And I swear it's just like, it's going like this. It's going to be over. My kids are going to be grown and done with school before I know it. But I know for a fact, like I get to look back and be like, I enjoyed all of it. I was here for all of it. And I know some people love to be like, well, that's a privilege. And it is. But at the same time, when people say that, you discount the fact that like we had to make this happen. It didn't just like somebody come and say, oh, Cherie, you stay home, girl. You stay home. We got you. We gonna pay all your bills. Like 2 incomes is always going to be better than one. Just found different ways. Like you do what you have to do to make it happen. And the amount of time that we get together, it's priceless. Those are my top reasons why I homeschool as a former teacher. I hope some of these little tidbits of what I shared help you if you're on your homeschooling journey or you're thinking about homeschooling. If you are, you can grab my free homeschool starter kit in my profile. And as always, if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. And make sure to subscribe and follow along. And I will see you next week for another Girl Chat.